Israel's strike in Qatar on September 9th was targeting senior Hamas officials that were operating abroad, directing rocket fire and managing the hostages. Israel saw the September 9th incident was not a blunder, but a success as it broke Hamas's illusion of immunity. In fact, one senior security official said privately, without that strike, Hamas would not have come to the table. What are your thoughts?
I think that is probably the case. There's plenty of argument here about whether it was effective, wasn't effective, whose fault it was that it wasn't effective. Did you risk your relationship with the United States by doing this? But I think it had to have had some kind of effect. And in fact, Jared Kushner made some comment when he was talking about it, even when they were criticizing it basically hinting that it created an opening.
Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that focuses the light of truth on vital issues in today's headlines that impact every American. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I'm here to educate, motivate, and activate you to action. I want to arm you with the truth and the facts you'll need to fight and preserve our constitutional republic and uphold the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a PJTN podcast, and I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore. On today's podcast, I've invited Abe Katsman on the program to discuss the recent confrontation between President Trump's personal envoys, Steve Witcomb and Jared Kushner, and Israel, who flew to Israel earlier this week to oversee the execution of the ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel. Abe Katsman is a Seattle native, an American attorney, consultant, political commentator, and writer living in Israel. He serves as counsel to Republicans overseas in Israel. Our audience might recall that Abe joins the American Adversaries radio show with Christopher Hart and myself every Monday evening from 5 to 7 p.m. Abe, thank you for joining us on Proclaiming Justice.
I am ready to proclaim.
All right, because we've got a lot to talk about. Thank you for joining us. We've had an extremely busy media week with the announcement of the ceasefire and the release of all the living and some of the deceased hostages in Gaza. Abe, how are the Israelis holding up with all of these events unfolding and it seems like the shifting sands over the past week?
Well, I think all in all, people here are still pleased with, well, for one thing, they're ecstatic over the return of at least the living hostages. Now, that's bittersweet for a lot of people. There are a lot of families that have lost people in the last 2 years, including mine. And it's tough, but still the fact that they got 20 living people back and even some of the deceased, not all that they were promised, but that's got people very happy. I mean, just to give you some idea of something, in religious services, it has become standard for the past 2 years to recite an extra chapter or two from the book of Psalms. And that was sort of for the hope and credit for getting the hostages released. And that has now finally been suspended. So this is something that was really on people's minds. It's personal here. Everybody knows somebody who was a hostage or a casualty. It's it's a small place and like a great big family. So people are very much affected by that. Besides that, sure, people are a bit worried. I don't think they're surprised that Hamas is not playing ball exactly according to the rules that they thought everybody else thought they had set.
Right.
And that's that is of course a problem. I mean, it's really, in a way, this is really the first part in many ways was the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy. It's kind of like with Oslo, where you said, oh, we're just going to sign something and there won't be any more
Yeah.
war. But all those other thorny issues, we'll straighten them out in the end.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's kind of like that here with Hamas. It's like, yeah, Hamas will disarm, and there will be some new government authority that'll take over Gaza. We'll worry about that soon. Right now, we're freeing the hostages.
Right, right. Yeah, it's quite the challenge. And of course, we're sitting over here in the United States in the West and watching some of the events unfolding and kind of scratching our heads saying, wait a minute, these people are terrorists. I want to talk today about the recent tensions that arose following Witkoff's and Kushner's interview with Leslie Stahl on CBS 60 Minutes last Sunday. Apparently, Witkoff and Kushner decided to take the opportunity during the interview to publicly condemn Israel's actions on September 9th after striking Hamas operatives in Qatar. In fact, Witkoff stated, quote, I think both Jared and I just feel we felt a little bit betrayed. We had people in the region working toward a framework, and suddenly Israel went and did something that looked like it could blow up the entire process. Do you find this statement odd that they would make such a comment on 60 Minutes? I mean, a major media outlet that looks like it's slapping, the hand of Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government, the administration.
Yeah, I'm, wasn't happy to see it. Betrayal is a very strong word, even if you're going to put the words a little bit before it. I'm not sure that takes away the sting. Look, I find it hard to believe. Maybe Witkoff and Kushner were not apprised of what was going on, but I am certain that Israel did not pull a stunt like trying to bomb Qatar without letting the U.S. at least know beforehand.
Right.
Now, the one thing you have to do here, and I'm not sure people in Israel are necessarily good at this because, look, everybody looks at this from their own perspective.
Right.
And from Israel's perspective, this wasn't good. But understand that we're looking at this differently. Israel is focused at this point on, they've got a war, they've got hostages they had to get back.
Right.
They're dealing with returning a bunch of terrorists back to Gaza or to Judea and Samaria. It's not that Israel's got its own issues here, but the focus for America is on something much bigger. And if you listen, especially if you listen closely to the way that President Trump talks about it, Israel and Hamas in particular are pieces of something much bigger. So it's important for them and important for the relationships here that are going to be necessary to be, to kind of be maintained and coaxed in order to get a broader regional agreement. I understand if the U.S. needs to show some degree of, let's say, we'll call it plausible deniability. So even if they were aware, the audience might be America. The audience is, in many ways, probably the people running Qatar and Indonesia and Azerbaijan and Turkey and everyone else who's going to be a piece of this.
Right. Well, Kushner added that President Trump thought Israel was getting a little out of control in what they were doing, and that it was time to be very strong and stop them from doing things that were not in their long-term interest. I've been watching what's been unfolding, and to me, I think Bibi has been very focused on ensuring Israel's long-term interests and protecting that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I think very much so. And I think, look, he's got plenty of local opposition. domestic politics opposition.
Right.
So people are going to be calling into question his motives no matter what he does.
So he's
But
going to
when
be
you-
running. He's going to be running for prime minister again. He's got an election coming up.
So he says, yeah. I mean, if nothing happens, elections will be in another year. They could end up arranging to call for early elections. I'm not sure how fast that can be done. I know there's a temptation. There's very often a temptation that when a political party thinks that they're riding high in the polls, or the leader is riding high, call snap elections, and you think you're gonna like double your majority within the Knesset. And it never tends to work that way because other events come up, things get in the way. Just because you're at a high now, just natural regression to the mean would indicate that you're not going to be in the same place in 3 months. So I've seen this happen a number of times before. The party in power calls early elections, and they end up either losing seats, or at least it's a very close call. It's not the cakewalk that they expect when they call the elections.
Yeah. So getting back to September 9th, it seems that by implication, Trump was saying that Israel's actions on September 9th was undermining the diplomatic process, when throughout this process, Trump has told Bibi to defend its citizens. It seems as though President Trump is sending mixed messages. Do you find this concerning? What are your thoughts, Abe?
He may be, or again, it may just be that he has to say something like this the same way that Prime Minister Netanyahu has to make some perfunctory apology to the Qataris, however he formulated it. So he was apologizing, but not apologizing at the same time. I think this is part of broader diplomacy, and there are some parties here. They always talk about honor societies, and the societies that you're dealing with here in the Middle East are very much like that. A little slight can wreck the diplomatic process here. So, and I think at least it can when you're dealing with Qatar. Israel, apparently, you can always feel free to slight, and never seems to make that big a difference.
Exactly. It's amazing how it felt that way, right?
Israel's happy to be the political punching bag if that's what it takes in order to get the political arrangements that it needs.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I was concerned about the whole that whole statement, or that line of questioning with regards to Witkoff and Kushner during that show. Because if I recall correctly, it's Hamas that continues, and there was no condemnation. It didn't seem like there was any condemnation about Hamas and how they refused to continue to honor the agreements, how, they say one thing and then they're killing, IDF soldiers. From day one, Hamas has continued to violate international law and ceasefire agreements. So do you find the lack of condemnation of Hamas concerning? I mean, it seems like they came to this 60 Minutes interview, and it seems like it was all about beating on Israel.
Yeah. Again, I think, and maybe the way it was edited, the condemnation of Hamas is, at least should be, sort of a given. So I guess they feel they don't have to make that statement. And the more interesting thing for the viewers, as far as 60 Minutes is concerned, is what went into this in the background. That said, there were a couple of other worrying things to me. I mean, one of the things, they made a big deal here about, they spoke, at least according to the transcript that I saw, that representatives from Israel and Qatar hugged, and that And that also Witkoff apparently lost a child, and since one of the negotiators here from Hamas, I guess, had also lost a child in this raid, in the Israeli attack, so that kind of created a certain personal bond. Now, maybe this is how back-channel negotiations are supposed to work. If they are, that is worrisome, because just because somebody hugs you 1 minute doesn't mean that you turn your national security over to them.
Correct. Yes, for our audience, just for context, you may recall that Israel's strike in Qatar on September 9th was targeting senior Hamas officials that were operating abroad, directing rocket fire and managing the hostages. So, however, Abe, Israel saw the September 9th incident was not a blunder, but a success, as it broke Hamas's illusion of immunity. In fact, one senior security official said privately, without that strike, Hamas would not have come to the table. What are your thoughts?
I think that is probably the case. I think it's hard to say that it didn't have that effect, whether that was the intended effect or not. Again, there are plenty of people. There's plenty of argument here about whether it was effective, wasn't effective, whose fault it was that it wasn't effective, whether you really did you risk your relationship with the United States by doing this. I think it's probably overanalyzed, but I think it had to have had some kind of effect. And in fact, Jared Kushner made some comment when he was talking about it, even when they were criticizing it, basically hinting that it created an opening. So it's hard to read. You don't know exactly what to believe and to what degree you take their statements on television at face value.
Right. Yeah, Witkoff's and Kushner's comments also confirmed they were holding back channel exchanges with Hamas representatives in Doha. Isn't that a violation of American policy that goes back, I believe, back to the 90s, where, Hamas was designated as a terrorist organization, but here we're having back channel conversations with them?
Yeah, I think under the circumstances, it's the law against that, against having any sort of contact with them, is not really for this kind of situation. It really is about not. Here you work at least with their representatives if that's what you must do in order to get this deal agreed to, and especially if there are bigger pieces. But because they would have to get, they said, and it's true, there's an incredible amount of justified mistrust of Hamas from this side, and unjustified bad blood that Hamas has toward Israel and probably toward the United States. So, I think you can blur the line a little bit that generally you aren't supposed to cross. But you're right. I'm not so comfortable with it, but I'd probably be a lot more upset about it if I thought that, let's say, if it was the previous administration and I thought that they had compromised a major principle for nothing. Yes. They just here it's a little bit different, and in general, some of the steps that have been taken, I would be a lot more worried about them if they were done by the Biden or Obama administrations.
Agreed.
And these guys, the Trump team, they're not fools. No. And I think people here have learned that maybe they might not be right about everything, but generally you can trust them not to be working really behind your back.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that statement, but it's still, to me, it's troubling that two private citizens acting on behalf of the President of the United States were willing to negotiate with the U.S. designated terrorist organization, especially considering that Israelis and Americans were slaughtered by these barbarians. It just causes me to wonder how many other meetings were conducted without Israeli participation. I mean, think about it. We've got, in the last week, we have again 2 IDF soldiers were killed, 3 were
Right,
wounded in Rafah.
right.
And now you have Hamas saying it wasn't them. Even the Israelis are saying the attacks came from a faction group. So who are we working with, Abe? Because they can hide behind the other faction groups, and it could actually be them, pulling this off.
Right. As I made the comment when you were on the air the other night, that this, when if suddenly you're using the excuse that, well, there are 40 different factions and we have agreements with a certain number of them, but there are rogue factions, there are rebels. I said, it sounds to me almost like the excuse of talking about mostly peaceful protesters.
Yeah,
Here,
good point.
you've got, they'd better all be on board, or you haven't made much of a deal.
Hmm.
I mean, who are you negotiating with if it wasn't
Exactly.
the people who actually are in control here?
Hmm.
That said, I can't say it's not true. There are power struggles, and in fact, one of the things that Israel accomplished was really taking out the top probably 2 or 3 layers of the command and control structure
Hmm.
of Hamas. So it may be that there really isn't one entity, one person on top who speaks for everybody. It may be that you've got cells that are actually freelancing. And
Hmm.
on top of that, they're sort of like it's like the crime families battling for turf.
Right.
So you've got that element of it also. And right. So the reports later were that this faction, this attack, actually was an attack that was going to be made against the clan that runs Rafah, kind of under Israeli control,
Hmm.
and that Israel was stopping this attack, but they had a battle, and Hamas came armed. So it was Israel that took the brunt of it and lost 2 soldiers. It's terrible that this, every one of these, every loss hurts, but you
Yeah.
think that you're done with them, at least for this war, and then this happens within days that you
Hmm.
lose 2 more soldiers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's outrageous. I mean, so was the Klan the group that was involved in assassinating those 30, uh, I guess, Gazans?
No, in fact, it was probably a different clan that was, uh, whose members were being assassinated by Hamas.
Mm.
Hamas has killed a number of members of another clan, a Gaza City clan. This is really an area, this is a clan that runs an area that's really under Israel's control. Now,
Hmm.
it may be that there's some overlap. There are some areas that extend beyond
Hmm.
Israel's control where they operate. I don't know,
Hmm.
but Hamas at this point is taking advantage of this time to regroup,
Yeah.
if they can, to rearm. But they're also going in and they are making sure that anybody else thinks twice about getting involved or disarming them or removing them from power. They're
Hmm.
going into to hospitals and interrogating people, and again, and executing them if they don't like their answers. It really is. They're evil. I
Yeah.
don't know what other way there is to put it.
Exactly. That's why I said, how do you negotiate with these people? I mean, they're terrorists. They're terrorizing not just the innocent civilians in Gaza who want to. have, freedom. I mean, is that even possible because of the whole culture, that they're living under? But Bibi has made it very clear. He said that Israel will uphold the ceasefire as long as
Yep.
it serves our security interests. And when it doesn't, Trump has been very clear also,
Yeah.
telling Bibi, finish the job. Do what you got to do to protect your citizens. Bottom line, that's what needs to happen. And the United States of America, its citizens, stand behind Israel, and because honest, as we all know, Israel is the front line of this war on Western civilization. We have Christians being butchered in Nigeria by Islamists. You've got Gazans being butchering each other by Hamas and these faction groups. I mean, it's crazy, but this is why it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that you stay informed, you know what's going on, you understand the dynamics of what's going on, so you can read through all the rhetoric that's out there in the media. Abe, closing, is there really a ceasefire, and will there really be a peace agreement?
Well, I greeted all of this when it came about as, it's an impressive diplomatic accomplishment, but I think I said I had cautious pessimism in terms of the ability for all of this to work out. And there are a lot of players here who you're relying on that can't really be relied on unless somehow the U.S. has provided incentives for them to behave and not to stab everyone else in the back. It's ambitious, and I've got to say it's creative. If there really is, if this could hold, and it could, I really think this administration, and starting with President Trump, seems to have a very good grasp of what levers they have to push and to coax people in one direction or another. But at the same time, I think they've got to, you can never underestimate what Hamas is capable of doing. And you can't just say, oh, well, I mean, they're even talking today when Vice President Vance said, yes, they must disarm, they must give up power, we're putting in a new force, but there are no deadlines. We have to be flexible. Okay.
That's confusing. Right. Good luck. That's right.
Yeah. It may be good enough, but if I'm Hamas and I'm listening to that, I'm saying they don't yet know what to do with us, and this is an opportunity for us to try to consolidate some of our whatever power we've got left.
Right. Well, Abe, thank you so much. Can you tell our audience how they can find you, how they can follow your work?
Sure. You can find me on Abe Katsman. That's Katsman. AbeKatsman.com. I'm also on Facebook and probably a couple of other social media platforms that I don't use very much.
All right.
So, and my work appears, my articles appear. I just had one in American Thinker. I've been in the Daily Caller. There are a number of places where I get published. So keep an eye out for them. But generally, you can sign up on my website and make sure that you get all of my columns as they come out.
Fantastic. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you want to be on his list, because he is extremely informative. He shares a perspective that I don't always hear from experts out there in the field. So Abe, we are so grateful for the time. Thanks for helping us to kind of put all this into perspective, and we look forward to having you back on the program.
My pleasure. Go out there and keep proclaiming.
You got it. God bless.
All right, thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this program informative. We will post this podcast on our website and all of our podcast platforms so that you can share with your family and friends. As PJTN Watchmen, we have a biblical mandate to stand against the ungodly rising Nazi threat that is destroying this nation and other Western nations, threatening our Judeo-Christian values and promoting anti-Semitism. We cannot remain silent. God warned the prophet Ezekiel about the responsibility of the watchman. As a watchman, you can sound the alarm and warn others by simply sharing this podcast with your family and friends. Please share and like this podcast to help sound the alarm in your community. Dietrich Bonhoeffer reminded us that silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Don't forget to join us for next week's podcast as we continue our conversation about combating the rise of anti-Semitism and taking back local control of our communities and our children's education. I also want to remind you that if you have not signed up to become a PJTN Watchman, you can help support this mission through our award-winning documentaries and Focus on Israel programs, as well as more programs just like this one for just $20 a month. So go to our website at pjtn.org to watch our programs and listen to our past podcasts. Your generous monthly donation will ensure that PJTN remains on the front lines and in the headlines, but we can't do it without your faithful prayers and financial support. I hope that you will prayerfully consider supporting our mission as we educate to activate Jews, Christians, and all people of conscience to stand on the front lines of this all-encompassing war. God bless you. And thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, the State of Israel, and these United States. Thank you again for joining me on this edition of Proclaiming Justice. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information about how you can get involved, please visit our website at pjtn.org. As a PJTN Watchman, you can help us keep up the fight to preserve our freedom for our children and their children for such a time as this.